Hello and welcome to Story Dev. My name is Luke, also known as Tienery, and welcome to another episode of Story Creator. In this episode, we will discuss designing our test environment form, which will display the results of our scripts while we work on them. As we are just getting started with our test environment form, the first thing I'm going to be doing is just laying out a couple of panels so that we can add kind of a wizard style design to our test environment form. This will include a cancel button. Will also include a next button, and it will also include a previous button. Just adjusting some properties here, try to see if we can apply some padding and margin to the buttons. Doesn't quite work as I thought it would. Just applying any kind of random values to them, see what happens. It's no avail. But we carry on anyway. So we're just going to add some user controls here. First one is going to be just called section basic. And in here, all we want is the ability to display any errors or warnings that come up when we run our scripts. So when we run our scripts for the first time, we want to use the JINT, the J-engine capabilities of detecting any JavaScript exceptions, producing the errors which we have, I believe we've already done, and simply display them in this design here. And any warnings as well, of course. Once again, adjusting some properties list on the list view that we've just created. Need to make sure that we don't accidentally. Basically making the appearance look a bit better. Add another form here. Want to of course make sure there's some margins and padding here. We add this flow layout panel. Eventually I just opt for a normal panel in the end because it just seems to work better. So we paste all that in once again. Add another panel. Add that in there like that. Then add another panel, add the list view control in there, apply the padding correctly. Basically all we want to do is just make sure that the actual looks of the application. The reason why we're doing this primarily is because let's say we are on a different sized screen, maybe it's not a 4K resolution screen, or maybe the size of our fonts is not as large as they would be on a 4K screen. So we want to make sure that our layouts are correct to make sure that it looks fine on all screen sizes and devices. Once again, we're applying the same formatting here with this new section results. We add a checkbox here, or radio button, which we actually display as a button. We might actually have some additional results options later. Just add some styling to that to make it look a bit less Windows-like. eventually opt for a couple of colors here to make it look a bit more interesting. Just going to stick to the one for now, the data structures. And in here we've got another panel which we will be using to actually contain whatever it is that we want to add to that. So for this one we're going to have this thing called data structures, all of the content for that. So up here we're going to have a combo box. This combo box is going to have all of the list of the structures that we've ever created throughout all our scripts. If you've looked at the previous episode, then you'll notice that we clear all of our scripts before we run them again, so that we don't end up adding the same structures over and over again. Obviously we don't want that. We add another list view here. Again, we're going to add some columns, make it in the detailed version, and we're going to add some fields here to basically describe what the fields in that structure is. We have this class of array, but that just doesn't really make much sense anymore. I end up deleting it, and what I decide to do, just having a look at what options we've got within our class for each of our structures so that we get all of the relevant information. So here we are, we're actually going to implement some coding here. So we're just going to iterate over each of our structures. This is going to be an IEnumerable. We don't need to modify the structures list, so we don't take an exact reference. In this case, we just take basically the enumerator of the list. Get the element of any selected structure that we've just done, clear the fields, and in here all we want to do is basically create the items that are going to represent each of those fields within that list view. Here we just get a traditional type. This will probably be static at some point, maybe if we need it somewhere else, but for the time being we just need it here, so we keep it in this context. And here all I'm doing is just getting the name of a type for our first sub item. And then filling in the rest of the details. If our struct reference is not empty or null, then definitely add that. Otherwise, again, just simply say empty or NA. Just double checking something here. I think go ahead and just copy and paste a couple of things just to be sure. And here we're just adding whatever our field reference is, depending on what reference has been set for that field. Just like we did when we actually validated our scripts, we're basically doing the exact same thing, but we're just filling in what we believe is correct, is the correct source, should I say. Now here we're not actually going to be getting any items or retrieving anything, so we just display the results. As for the array, we're just going to say give a count of how many items are there in that array. Here we have our section results, so we're going to create that new results user control that we just had. And that's literally all we need because we've only got one option at the moment. Next we create go into our section basic. We create a method for populating our lists, and we're going to check our errors. So there's going to be two different types of errors. Of course, I forget to actually add the public property for that. Of course, got to make sure we actually add the item to the list view. That would be helpful. And here, once again, we're just going to iterate through all of those errors that we've just allocated, and we're going to create an item and add that to our list as well. So in our test environment form, what we do is we want to basically create this wizard implementation so that we've got our new button and previous button doing the things that we want it to do. So we add a couple of pages here. We'll probably refactor this later to make it more of a wizard, so that it isn't just confined to test environment form. And here I'm just going to create some methods. So next page, that's going to have, depending on what our current page value is, we're going to determine whether or not our btn next button is going to have its text equal to finish or next. Clear the controls and then add the page of the current page that we're looking at. Here once again we're just doing these basic checks, determining whether or not our previous button is actually going to be enabled. So if we're already on the first page, then our previous button doesn't need to be enabled. Here we do the check once again. We create an interface here called iWizardPage. We add two properties here, technically one, iWizardPage, and the reason being is because we want to basically know when we have the ability to go forwards. If we're going to tell our wizards that we can't move forwards because the number of errors that we've got is greater than 0, then we're not going to allow it. For the other page, we're just going to say it's fine to go ahead. So we use that and we check that can go forwards, and that's going to basically determine whether btn next is going to be available. And we do the same thing for both methods, next page and previous as well. Add the functionality to actually open that. What we do is then run that. We can see there's something wrong as a test, and that of array of course doesn't exist. I actually go back and double check that. So that was actually a good example of our scripts just not working. So we do go back in here, double check that, run, next, finish. Everything appears to exist. I'm not actually selecting the full row, which was a little odd. There was a little bit of an issue there as well with regards to the display of the type there, but eventually I go back to the environment class and I realize actually I've added something else. I do a little test there, but obviously that's not going to work. So I go in here, when I debug, I realize that the types are being used twice. As you can see, field.type is being assigned twice, which is why we get that problem. And then eventually that gets corrected. The last thing, of course, to do is to actually go back into the list view and make sure that full item select is true, so that we don't end up with that previous issue. One last test once again. And when we select the items, everything should all be good. So, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. In the next episode, we will discuss how we will generate data forms from these data structures. So until then, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.